Okay, so I wanted to do a last week, this week with you on today's market update. So last week on SPY, we had a market that was moving higher. Again, we're kind of targeting these higher highs and higher lows. Pullback from the high to the low in April took us from around 525 back down to below 500, and then we just started rocketing up. And what a nice move we've had since about the middle of April. So right after tax time, we had the markets moving off their lows and got all the way up to around 562, a nice extension forward. And we hit a 550 target we were looking for earlier in the month. And our next resistance was 580 that we saw. The contrarians were saying, hey, based on what we're seeing right now, we could see some moves higher. But again, this was a week, 10 days ago. And so a lot has happened in the last 10 days, and a lot has happened to the chart too. Take a look at what's happened coming into today. Now we've seen a change. So last week we saw continued move to the upside, but the contrarians are now suggesting that the high is in for the summer, and potentially we could be seeing a pullback. Look at what happened last week. We saw, again, in the middle of the week to the end of the week, we saw the S&P go from about 565 down to below 550. Yeah, we're getting a little bit of relief today, but breaking this line, this is a trend line that we're looking at here, a contrarian trend line. We break that line, and I think if we go below 548, I believe that tells us that we are going to perhaps be in a correction for the stock market. All right. Remember last week we saw pretty much everything going up, and I said to you, and I've said this in the last couple of weeks, that something's got to give because we're seeing trends up in the stock market and we're seeing trends down in the bond market. We're seeing trends up in cash, and stocks and cash can't keep going up in the same direction because something's got to give. And right now, what looks like it's trying to give might be the stock market. Let's take a look at bonds. Last week chart in the bonds. We're seeing the bonds that are in a different situation where we're seeing lower highs and lower lows. And we saw that pullback and we saw a relief rally. And what's happened since then? Last week, we had TLT on track to move lower. This week, coming into today, nothing's changed. We have not seen higher highs on the bonds. In fact, we've seen the market the bonds kind of peel off a little bit. So that trajectory we see of around 85, give or take 2.5 points, still looks like it's intact for TLT. That would mean that that we could see, again, stiffening interest rates, which would fare well. I'm not going to say well, which would be really a confirmation the stocks could be on a pause. Take a look at last week's chart of the US dollar. It was moving higher. We did see some pullback here, and we thought, oh, could this be the area we get below that support line of 28.50? You know, could that we be moving lower? Again, this is UUP, the double dollar index. Here's this week's chart of UUP, and there's no changes. The US dollar is still strong, and so we're seeing that the back half last week we saw gains in UUP. So we still see potentially a move higher. That this high that we're seeing here back at the end of June, it's not being called yet in the US dollar. US dollar still looks like it wants to be on track for higher highs. Again, that would confirm the potential pause in the stock market. All right, so last week we were talking about, and last month we were talking about USO and oil ending its seasonal bullish run. That was over as of June 15th. Fast forward a week later, are we lower than the $60.85 that we saw last Monday? Here's where we were coming into today. USO ticking down. So we're seeing that tick down, quite a bit of a tick down, as you can see here. This is Monday, so Friday, Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday. So we are down below where we were. It looks like we're looking to move lower still, and we expect USO to tick down because and there were some things that came out of the RNC last week. One of the quotes was "drill, baby, drill." Obviously, that would be bearish for oil, but that is hearsay right now. That's all going to be regarding the outcome of the presidential election. We're looking at seasonal bearishness here in oil, and oil going down seasonally between now and mid-February means that, guess what? USO should tick down between now and February. All right, last week's chart in gold. We saw all-time highs getting very close to hitting again. We saw that target of $250 for GLD. Support was at 210. Look at what has happened in just a week. Now, you saw gold ticked up to 230 last week. We saw gold hit all-time highs, all right? But look what happened after Wednesday. Here's Thursday, here's Friday, here's today. And down here around 216 would be the confirmation that that target could be set in for the time being. We get below this move here, and we are in what we call that corrective phase for GLD. So did GLD just hit its target last week? Contrarians think so. That's an interesting point that I wanted to make. Finally, and I would be remiss if I didn't talk about Bitcoin. Bitcoin, I want to show you, this is the chart of July for Bitcoin. So this is the month of July. Now, there seems to be a lot more in here, but remember, this includes July 4th. This includes weekends. So weekends and holidays are part of this chart because Bitcoin trades every day. You can see the lows that were occurring in July as we went below 55. Here's the Trump assassination attempt that happened. A couple of days later, the RNC starts. And of course, right around here, I believe, is when Trump was talking. And of course, we had a little bit of a move forward. The 19th was a big move upward as we were finding more and more. I believe this is when Joe Biden had been tested positive for COVID, right? This was yesterday, all right? This is Sunday, the 21st, when Joe Biden dropped out of the presidential race. And here we are today, a little bit of a pullback. But Bitcoin has had a heck of a rally coming off of from July 5th. So just in the last, let's call it 2 weeks, we've seen Bitcoin rally from the mid 50s up to really the high 50s to the high 60s. We've seen a 10,000 point move in Bitcoin in just the last few weeks. So summing all of this up for our market overview, you got stocks and gold. They're deviating right now from their bullish outlooks of just a week to 2 weeks ago. Bonds, that's TLT, USD, and oil still on track. They're still on their regular track. And of course, crypto rallies on Trump. And it looks like it might be falling on Biden. Maybe not so much, maybe pausing on the news coming out of the Biden camp.